Good afternoon, distinguished guests, parents, teachers, and students. I am Arjun.
Hello everyone, and I am Krish. Arjun and I are the moderators for the very first panel discussion of GD Goenka World School, and the panelists are going to talk about virtual schooling versus classroom teaching.
Well, I must say that at first, when the lockdown was announced, it seemed like a relief from routine. But soon I realized that school and teachers were much easier to handle than home chores and constant parental nagging. And Krish, what has your experience been like?
Well, my thoughts are similar, and ever since I had them, I have been praying for God to banish the virus so I can go back to school. It was only when the school announced virtual classes that I breathed a sign of relief. I'm sure, just like me, some of you have had mixed feelings about the pandemic and lockdown too.
On a more serious note, anxiety, fear, uncertainty about the future, and constant worry about health. Well, that's what this lockdown has been about for most of us. Almost every adult currently living through the COVID 19 pandemic is experiencing these. What you might not realize is that even children are going through a similar stressful time.
Thus, today, we are glad to host a panel discussion on virtual schooling versus classroom teaching. We have here two teams, Team A and Team B, with two students who shall be discussing the topic.
As the current situation demands, most, if not all, schools across the world have been forced to shift from the domain of the classroom to the relatively unexplored world of virtual schooling. And most of us have mixed feelings about this change in the academic scenario. Well, let me now introduce our panelists to you. Team A comprises of Ishan and Tejaswini, and they seem to be in the favor of classroom teaching, while Team B comprises of Karan and Praneel, and they are siding with virtual schooling.
But before we hear from them, let me once reiterate the rules of the forum which have already been shared with the panelists. Every panelist will be permitted to voice his or her opinion for 3 to 5 minutes. Panelists must disagree politely and discuss their points respectfully. During the discussion, access to electronic devices such as the internet, mobile phones, etc. is debarred. Rebuttal and counter questioning shall only be allowed after each participant has spoken. Usage of abusive language or slang words is strictly prohibited during the discussion. We request spectators to put their questions in the chat box and we will try to incorporate them into the discussion after the panelists have given us their points of view. So, without wasting any time, let us embark
Right,
on a
Krish?
journey through the young minds and see what their thoughts are.
Right, Krish, if you're done with your jargon, maybe please start the discussion now, as I can already see Ishan, and he seems eager to start the conversation.
Thank you, Arjun, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this platform. I'm here to express my opinion on the topic classroom teaching versus virtual schooling. The question of which teaching methodology is better, classroom teaching or virtual schooling, is always a puzzling one. Traditional classroom teaching methodologies are well tested and are comfortable for students for the better learning. It's the environment most of us grew up and it has many advantages. But virtual classes, on the other hand, are new and high tech and are unknown to many of us. Let me bring forward some advantages of classroom teaching. Firstly, it improves social skills. Inside a classroom, students experience social interaction with peers and establish a bond with teachers. Helping children develop socially is an important aspect within the realm of their academic education. Secondly, it keeps students stimulated. The physical presence of the teacher keeps students stimulated through the interactive and interesting activities. This enables students to retain more from what they have learned during a session. Thirdly, it enhances critical thinking skills. Teaching in the classroom gives students the opportunity to engage in the live discussions, in which they are forced to use their critical thinking skills to formulate their opinions and arguments. I would like to end by giving some disadvantages of virtual teaching. Firstly, virtual classroom requires computer and internet access. It may happen that some students do not have personal devices on their hand to access live classes on internet. Secondly, No control over the students on the virtual classroom. Nobody knows that while the classes are going on, are the students attentive or not? Or are they bunking the class? This is the biggest disadvantage which occurs on the virtual platform, and this led to the lack of understanding for a student. This is why my suggestion is that classroom teaching is better than virtual teaching.
I agree completely, Ishan. Many parents might not be able to afford the gadgets that we need to conduct virtual schooling. Next, we have Tejaswini, who will also be talking about virtual schooling.
Thank you, Chris. The past 2 months have gone by with all of us panicking over COVID 19 and trying to get used to the strange feeling of staying at home for weeks. At this point, almost all schools have started virtual classes for their students. I do have to agree that in this situation, the only option that we have is virtual classes, but some schools have started considering this for the long run. This is what I'm against, and here's why. Firstly, in the setting of a classroom, the teacher will be able to physically guide the students. It is also noticed that a student is more likely to retain a lot more from the physical presence of a teacher than anything else. Not only that, but also a teacher will find it easier to adapt according to each student in their presence than online. I'm pretty sure we have faced difficulty in this method of learning ourselves, as we have been attending virtual classes for at least about 3 weeks now. Not every student will be able to afford the laptop or the internet. It is difficult for schools to manage school for several classes 5 to 6 times a week back to back. We have also been attending school since a very young age, so it is psychologically normal for us to face fear in studying in an environment that we're not so used to. The sole purpose of a traditional classroom environment is to stimulate collaborative learning. It helps the students to understand life skills and improves their social skills. On the final note, attending a class in real life makes the students take active participation. In many aspects, a traditional classroom is much more convenient than a virtual class.
That was very informative. Thank you, Tejasvi. Next, we'll be moving on to virtual schooling. Pranir, would you like to say something for it?
Yes, Arjun, I'd love to. Now, due to the novel coronavirus, we are being taught virtually for the past 2 months. Mostly sitting in front of a laptop screen for hours is said to be unproductive. But I feel it's actually better than going to normal school. Here's my opinion. The students can concentrate more on what the teacher is telling them to do, and if a doubt is asked, it can be answered almost immediately. The teachers can also move on to new topics quicker as a result of this. Virtual learning can be a step up from school. More information can be taken in by children in a less amount of time, and the syllabus can be completed a lot more efficiently. Test marks can also be given early, reducing stress for both teachers and students. The children are in a lot more familiar environment, which can make them more comfortable. Their grasping power increases. Teachers can administer their discipline more efficiently. Proper track record of every student is maintained in the applications. Virtual schooling is a lot cheaper than normal schooling, so it's pocket friendly to parents too. Virtual schooling resolves problems which occur due to geographical distance. Digital education is a whole new idea. As in the past, our Prime Minister endorsed Digital India. Then why don't we endorse digital education? It must be given a chance to shine, and it could bring sensational change in the way one looks at education. In the end, I'd just like to say that kids can learn easily from online resources for different types of students. For instance, take Byju's or Vedantu maybe. Prove this, and the school teachers can also teach them how to make notes and progress by self-evaluating themselves. And as we can tell, it's already quite dangerous for us to use any other form of education in the current scenario, as children, teachers, and staff need to be safe. So focus should be on how this disease does not spread and the education of students is not hindered. Pupils are struggling to catch up on months of lost learning, and virtual schooling is an answer to all of their problems. This is why I believe that online education is the best for now.
Well, we all have our opinions, and you explained yours very well, Pranit. Next, we have Karan, who will be adding on to what Pranil said.
Thank you, Krish. Here's my point of view on virtual schooling. Virtual schooling is something that is giving a spark to human civilization to take a step forward and step into the era of technology. Virtual schooling is very advantageous for our students. It lowers the total cost. The money that goes into transportation, school facility fees, and the electricity that pours through the entire school building can be saved. When tied down to a repetitive schedule, a student can have a mental impact. Virtual schooling can stop that from happening. While in virtual schooling, students can be given breaks in the middle of classes so that they can cool off. There will be absolutely no problem for absentees in catching up with the syllabus because all the material will be recorded. The student will only have to go through the recordings and they will gain all the required knowledge. Every person has a different comfort zone. It might not be the school. Virtual classrooms allow the students to learn and be educated in their very own comfort spot, where they think they would feel best. With the exceptionally infinite help of virtual schooling, the occurring of natural calamities such as heavy downpour and hailstorms will not cancel school. Here's a fact. Virtual schooling in our country has been happening for many years. For instance, Byju's and Udemy. COVID has only been a catalyst in moving all the schools to virtual classrooms. If I were to take an example from a developed nation such as the US, a lot of the education had already shifted to the virtual mode even before COVID happened. We as students have been using online mode of education without consciously even knowing about it. To give you an example, when we search on Google on how a heart beats, we're nothing else than using online mode of education to enhance our knowledge. Before ending, I would just like to point out, we all know that technology is the next generation, yet we are moving away from it. I say, why move backwards when you can move forward?
Thank you,
Over-
Karan. That was a very understandable and different point of view, and I'm sure everyone has their answer, have many thoughts rolling in their head. Well, now let's move on to the Q&A section. I am declaring the forum open for any team who would like to cross question each other. You are invited.
I would like to ask my question from Pranil. So, Pranil, can you tell me that how the students in the younger classes can manage to give their test online as they are not used to using technology?
Well, as they always say, kids can always be taught. And in this case, they can be taught to learn virtual schooling, that platform. This can be done in one of the two ways. They can use the internet, which is the most obvious and easiest, or they can learn from their former teachers who know more about the virtual schooling platform, or maybe even their parents if they know a bit about technology. I hope that answers your question, Ishan.
I'm satisfied with what you have said, Pranil.
Thanks.
If I may ask a question to Tejaswini. Tejaswini, do you think that when the pandemic is over, the parents would trust the school authorities even if they claimed that the school is sanitized and safe for the children to return?
The answer to this question lies in the amount of action the government is ready to take. If necessary action is taken and if awareness is spread, then I won't think parents would have a problem with sending their children to school.
Fair enough.
In fact, my next question is to you, Karan. So, don't you think that heavy downpour could cancel virtual classes as there might be a power cut?
Yes, when I was writing this down, yes, this did come to my mind. So I did my research on it and yeah, I came up with a solution. So with the massive amount of money we're saving with virtual schooling, we can sanction a little bit of that amount, a little bit towards making the power more stable, which would prevent those power cuts.
That is a good idea.
Thank you.
It is. In fact, my next question is directed to Tejaswani. Yes, Tejaswani. So, in your opinion, would virtual schooling lead our 20th century generation to a higher platform in teaching and education?
In my opinion, virtual schooling will not be able to replace a classroom as a whole, but some elements of virtual classes have proved itself to have better impact on the students' understanding. So I see the possibility of using virtual classes, a part of virtual classes actually, can be implemented into a normal traditional classroom.
Right, I understand your opinion.
My next question is directed to Karan. So, what precautions can institute take to ensure that cheating does not occur on the virtual forum?
Okay, let's be honest. This question has hit everybody in the head. Now, I know that there are these softwares which can be downloaded on the student's device, from which the teacher from her or his from their place, they can see what the student is actually doing on their device. They can see what tabs are open and what the student has opened. So that will ensure that the student does not cheat.
I agree what you have said, Karan.
I have a question to Pranil. So, do you think our country is financially ready to implement virtual classes for all students?
Good point, Tejaswani. It's got me thinking. And I have an answer. Well, in my opinion, this entire financial thing, I feel India's almost ready. Kinda like it's going to hit the barrier. But it's not happened yet. Big name companies such as Livono and HP are making the effort to distribute their products all around India for a very low price. So I feel like once there's more accessibility to technology in India, it'll be ready for virtual schooling. It'll be ready for the next big step in the 20th century. Thank you.
On that
Yeah,
note,
that
I
answers
would like to, I would like to ask Ishan a question. As we are aware that we would be entering a new normal after the pandemic, where social distancing and masks would be the new normal. How can the school authorities ensure that the students will follow and comply?
So, well, the answer is simple. The school authorities can collaborate with parents to train the children well and make them follow the norms.
Oh, I just remembered. Another question just popped up in my head. Very important. If you would mind. I have a question to ask to Isham once again. Sorry if you're getting too many questions. You must be bombarded with them. In your opinion, what are the parents' general opinion about their children taking virtual classes?
So, most parents don't mind virtual classes. However, there are some parents who cannot afford gadgets and internet connections to access live classes, and they don't want their children to spoil their eyesight in front of computers sitting for long hours to attend virtual classes. I feel that if the safety measures are taken, parents would prefer to send their wards to school.
Ah, good answer. I agree.
Well, now that you all seem to have asked your questions, I was curious whether the team from Classroom Schooling believes that it would be beneficial for us to integrate some aspects of virtual schooling, which we are learning more about nowadays, since we can't access classroom learning, into our normal schooling. Do you believe that would be beneficial for us to do so?
I would like to answer that question. So, as I said before, we have always incorporated some parts of virtual classes into a classroom. So, I don't think it would be a problem to do the same even after the lockdown. So, I think it would be a good thing to implement virtual classes into a traditional classroom.
That's a good point, Tejaswini. I agree with you.
Actually, I also had a question for the classroom teaching team. So, do you believe that schools will go back to plain and simple normal classroom teaching after the pandemic?
Well, I would like to answer this question. So it's difficult to say whether we will go back to the classroom teaching with the same routine or not. It all depends on the situation at that time. I feel that if the conditions are favorable, we should go back to the classroom teaching following the same routine as usual.
On that note, I would like to ask the virtual schooling team a question. As we know, as I said in my past question, we all are new to the virtual schooling platform. Our teachers also are new to this platform. Do you think they face problems during virtual schooling? If they do, how can they be helped to overcome them?
Krish, if I may.
Yeah, sure. Go on.
Yes, it is true. They do face a lot of difficulty. Their eyes are under heavy stress, and yes, virtual schooling is a 24/7 job for them. They don't get a break, and this could really affect their lives. The best we can do, and well, the school can do the best the school can do is they can provide vacations every week, or they could make the school on alternate days to make it balanced, and so that the teachers won't be under heavy stress.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for answering my question, Karan.
So, I also actually have a question for the virtual schooling team. So, do any of you believe that there is a foolproof way or a way to conduct assessments and exams on the virtual platform without any cheating happening?
Ah, good question, and I know the answer to this because it's happened to me or at least my brother before. Let me tell you this, Arjun. My brother has been studying in college for the past year or so, and he started taking virtual classes at midnight for the past 3 months in his room. He's taken he's taken 4 exams, all taken virtually, and guess what? He didn't cheat in any of them. In fact, nobody cheated in any of them. And let me guess, to your surprise, it's the use of third-party softwares that lets teachers keep tabs on which tabs the student has open. Cameras can also be left open for teachers to see what students are up to. I hope that answers your question very nicely.
Yeah, thank you, Praneel. That is a very clarifying
Well,
answer.
Well, with that last question, we don't really have too much time left, so we'll have to come to the end of our panel discussion. Thank you, participants, for sharing your views about virtual schooling versus classroom teaching. I'm truly awed at the research and time that has gone into framing your opinions and thoughts.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Krish. The performance has been truly inspirational. At this juncture, I would also like to thank our audience for being so disciplined. And a big shout out to our teachers and mentors who helped us prepare our parts and perform.
And Arjun, before we bid adieu, let us not forget to express our gratitude to the school management and support staff who has worked behind the scene to make this event successful.
And on that note, I, Arjun,
And I, Kirish, would like to conclude this event. Bye, stay safe, and have a great day.